All right, welcome shoppers. This is PSO2, my mood letter. We're going to talk about how to create an avatar that has your letter and also a small caption on it. Let's talk about the assignment. So it's a 40-point assignment. You're basically going to create a large letter on top of a background that fits your mood, and you're going to have a small caption that says something as well. You need to have your text to where it has a stroke around the outside and it has some outer glow. We're going to turn in two different examples of this assignment, and we're going to talk about why that is. You're going to turn in both a JPEG and a PST. All right, let's get into it. So first we're going to open up Photoshop. I'm going to just go to File and New as though I were opening a new Photoshop document here. You're going to see that it's going to ask you for a new Photoshop document. What you're going to want to pick is you're going to want to go up to Art and Illustration up here. When you pick what kind of document you're going to make, you want to pick Art and Illustration. And then you want to pick the 1000 by 1000 pixel grid right here. So there it is. It's under, if you go into the Art and Illustration section, you should see the 1000 pixel grid. So that's what we're going to use. I'm going to click on that. Once you go, you can get here by going to File and New. And then once you get to File and New, you can go to Art and Illustration right here. And from there, you can find that 1000 pixel grid. That's what we're going to use. You could also alternatively just type in 1000 and 1000 right here where it says width and height. That's basically the same thing. If you have any questions, please hold off until the end of the presentation. Thanks. All right, so here we are. I'm going to rename this to PS02 Mood Letter, because that's what this is going to be. There we go. I can't help you right now. Sorry, I'm giving a presentation. All right, so we're going to go to Create. I'm going to click on Create here. And now I have a 1000 by 1000 pixel grid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find an image on the internet that fits my mood right now. So I'm going to click right here on a Google search. And let's see, I'm going to do... So I'm going to search for an image here. I found an image that I want to use. Let's just pick, I want a nice large image. Here we go. Here's a good one. So once I find the image, before what you did in PSO1 is you right-clicked and you went to Save Image As when you selected your image. What is nice about Photoshop is you don't actually have to save images to add them to your Photoshop projects. What you could do is you could simply go down here to Copy Image instead. If you click on Copy Image, now it's in our clipboard. If I go to Photoshop and press Control-V, that's right, it puts the image in there. I don't have to save anything. I can just go right from the internet, right-click on the image and go to Copy Image, then go into Photoshop and press Control-V, and it will paste that image in here. Now, if you have the Move tool selected, which is over here, this little arrow over here, and you have the Transform Controls mark up here selected, then you're able to resize this. So I'm just going to resize this. I'm going to grab the corner of it here, just like we did with our collages. I'm going to make this image fit the size of my screen. So I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit. You might have to make your image larger or smaller. There we go. I've got mine fitting here. All right, excellent. So I've got the background to my image ready. What you're going to notice is down here on the bottom right, it shows your background and your layer 1. This is your stack of images. We're going to put one more, or actually we're going to put two more layers on top of this image. We're going to put our caption and our title. So to put our title down, over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see, whenever you resize something, I forgot to mention this, whenever you resize something in Photoshop, you're going to want to double click on it when you're done resizing it, and then that will tell Photoshop that that is the size that you want it to be. If you don't double click it, it doesn't know if you're still resizing it or not, so it might give you an error message, or it'll say, hey, do you want to resize this and finalize it? So if that's the case, if I move this and then I try to do something else, like click on a different tool, you'll usually get a little dialog box that pops up just telling you that you have to finalize it. So just double click on the image after you've resized it like this. You can either double click on it or you can click on this little check mark right here, and that will basically finalize it. All right, after you've resized your image, so that way it takes up the full size of your screen, you're going to click on the T. When you click on the T over here on the, sorry, let me move this here. Over on the sidebar here, you have the T, which is your text tool. Just so you know the shortcuts for these two tools, if you press V, that is the Move tool. It's unfortunate that it is V because M makes more sense, but V is inside of the word Move, and the M key is actually for the rectangular marquee, so that's why the M is not for Move. Move is the V key, and if you press the T key, then it opens up the Text tool. So there we go. If I press the T here, you can see up on the very top of the screen, it will show you what your current font is. I can click on the font here, and I can choose whichever kind of text I would like to be shown. So I'm just going to pick a simple font up here. And then you can also choose what size you want your font right here. So where this big T and little t are, this is how you can choose the size of your font. Now, it doesn't matter too much right now because we're going to manually resize the text in just a moment. The last thing you should know is that over here on the very top where this little black box is right here, that's the color of your text. So if you click on that box right there, you can then pick what color you want your text to be. The Photoshop color picker, basically you've got this rainbow on the right-hand side. If you click on that rainbow, then you can choose what color you want your text to be. And then this big box allows you to pick what shade of that color you want to use. So if you look up here, you've got the red shades. All the way down the rainbow, you can pick any color that you see here. I'm going to pick this color right here, and you can see that it'll show me what that color looks like. So there we go. I've got a color picked out. I'm going to press OK. And now when I type, that's going to be the text, or that's going to be the color that is used. If I click on this canvas here, you can see that it already puts some text in there, lorem ipsum. That's a just kind of filler text. I'm going to put the letter that I want to use as my main letter here. And you'll see that it's really small. That's okay. I'm just going to keep it there. And now after I have my letter down there, I can resize it just like I resize images. To do that, I'm going to switch to my Move tool. So I'm going to click up here. I'm going to click on my Move tool. And now when I click on that, you'll notice that the layer now has these little boxes around it. I can resize that text layer as large as I want. I don't have to pick the font beforehand. I can just move it and resize it the same way I did with my images. So there we go. I'm going to resize this. That's pretty good right there. When you got it the size you want, you can double click on it and then it will stay that size. All right, so now I've got my letter. I'm going to go back to my text tool and I'm going to type down here. I'm going to click down here and do one more small letter here. So I'm going to click down here a little bit and I'm going to put B206. Actually, I'll put Starry Night down here. So there we go. After I have my text inputted, I can click back on my, if you have text that is currently down, you can click on this check mark right here to be able to finalize the text, or you can press the Enter key on your keypad, or you can simply switch to another tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to my Move tool, and then I'm going to move that text where I want it to be. All right, awesome. We're almost there. Now, something that you got to note when we're making these layers is down here on the bottom right, you're going to see those layers and what order they're in right here. We can see that my background layer is underneath everything. Then I have this image here that is on top of that background layer. Then I have this capital M, which is on top of that, and I have Starry Nights, which is on top of that. So I can see all of my different layers over here. We're going to talk about how to use layer styles. So layer styles are when you double click just to the, okay, well, actually I should tell you two things. First off, you can rename these layers if you double click on the text of it. So right here where I have my Starry Night picture, I could double click on the name layer 1 and I can call it Starry Night. This is great if you have a lot of different layers and you're not sure which one is which. You can simply name them so that way you know which one is which. So I'm going to call this one Starry Night Image. There we go. And then I have my text layer here and I have my other text layer. If you want to open up layer styles for your layers, there's two ways to do it. You can click on the layer down here and select which one you want. And then up here on the very top, you can go to Layer, and then scroll down to Layer Style, and you can add layer styles, any one of the styles right here. So if I wanted to add a stroke style, I could add that right here. The other thing that you could do is you could simply double-click just to the right of where the text is on the layer option here. And if I double click over here in this empty space, you're going to see a dialog box pop up. And this is all of your layer styles. Your layer styles can basically be added here. So what we want to add a stroke right here. And we want to add, you could add a pattern overlay or a gradient overlay. I'll show you what both of those do. So first, let's talk about the stroke. If I click on stroke right here, you'll see a check mark appear, but you're probably not going to see a whole lot appear over here on the side. What you're going to see is over here in that dialog box, if you click on stroke, make sure that you click on the actual, on the column that's right here. If you click on that, then you're going to see these dialogues pop up. You can choose the color of the stroke, and you can also choose the size of the stroke, and you can choose the position of the stroke. So I'm going to make this happen on the outside, and I'm going to make the size expand a little bit. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. So when I do that, you're going to see that right down here where I have Starry Nights, when I move this slider back and forth, it will add more or less of that stroke on the outside of the text. I'm going to just go through all of it, and then I'll help each one of you, only because people can watch this video again later on. I don't want to waste their time when you're watching it the second time. So then we got this all the way through. If you want to pick the color to it, you can click right here where it says color, and then I can change this to something else. And so you can see as I change the color over here, it will change the color down below here where you can see that text. So basically I have a two-tone text that I can use when I add the stroke effect. Now what's cool is this can be used not just on text, but it could be used on any layer, and we'll talk about how we can use that for cool creative effects later. So this is how you can add a stroke. Let's talk about how you can add a gradient. Right here you'll notice that there's an option that says gradient overlay. If you click on the gradient overlay, you'll see that it will put a gradient or a steady change from one color to another down here. So as you can see, my colors are now purple and like a black up here. I can change what type of gradient it uses right here. So there's a whole bunch of color options. If you want to try using a gradient, you can make some pretty cool color effects with that. If you want, you can just go through all of these layer styles, check out what seems interesting. This allows you to put a pattern over the top. This allows you to put a drop shadow behind your layer. There's a lot of cool ones that you could use, but all I want you to use for this project that you need to have the stroke, and you want to also use the outer glow. What does the outer glow do? Well, the outer glow puts a glow behind the layer. So if I drive up, the main things that you want to use with outer glow are right here, the elements. There's spread and size. So if I increase the spread right here, you'll notice that outer glow becomes very apparent. It's like shooting out from the outside of the Starry Nights. So if I bring down the size a little bit, I can choose how much of that glow there is. So this really helps for making things stand out, any kind of text stand out. You're going to have a little bit of outer glow, and you're going to have a stroke around the outside of your font to get full credit on this project. All right, so I have all of my stuff ready. I've got my stroke applied. I've got my outer glow. And you'll notice down here on the Layers menu that it shows the effects that you currently have right here, the effects, and it says effects on the layer. That means you have these special effects applying to that layer. And if I click on the little eyeball next to effects, you'll see that it will actually hide those effects, and now it no longer has those cool little effects behind them. So that's how you can check to see what the difference is between them. Now, one last thing, I could go down here and I could double click and add layer styles to this one and make it match the same ones that I have here, but there's actually a shortcut for this, and I'm going to show you that shortcut. If you want to copy layer styles from one layer to another, all you have to do is, when you look down here on your layers, you can hold down the Alt key and click on where it says Effects right here, and then drag it down to whatever other layer you want that effect to be applied to. So here we go. I just copied the layer effects from Starry Night. I held down Alt on the keyboard, and I dragged it down to my M layer. So now, if I look at my letters, you'll see that they both have the same effect. They have that stroke along the outside, and they have a little outer glow. All right, this is all you need for this project. Now let's talk about how we save it. We have everything ready. We have our 3 layers. Very simple. The thing about Photoshop is you need to save every project that we do in Photoshop in 2 ways. You need to save it as a PSD and a JPEG. Now, what is the difference? A PSD is a Photoshop document, and it saves all of your layer information. All this stuff right here where you have the layer effects and you got the order of which layers go on top of each other, all that stuff is saved when you use a PSD. So it's a lot bigger in size. It can only be opened in Photoshop, but if you wanted to edit any of this stuff, you're still able to edit it as though they're all a bunch of separate pictures, a bunch of separate layers on top of each other. However, if you want to view it just as a picture, like if you wanted to post it on the internet or something, a PSD won't work. We would need to save it as a JPEG. And a JPEG is basically a flattened image. It takes all of these layers and it flattens them down into one layer, so it's really simple to process. It takes up a lot less space. However, we won't be able to go back and change all of this text stuff and all the different layers that we have. We won't be able to change that. So that's why we save it as 2 different files. we save it as the PSD, so we have all the layers, and then we save it as the JPEG, so that way we can just flatten it down and open it in any program. So let's see how we save those two things. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go up to File, and then click on Save As. You could also alternatively just press Shift, Control, and S. After you do that, then it'll ask you, hey, where do you want to save this? My suggestion is you use those folders that you made at the beginning of the year where you had a folder made for computer literacy in your Documents folder. That will still be present, so you should be able to use that, and it will show up on your OneDrive on any device you want. So I have a folder here that is called PS2 that I'm going to save it to. I'm going to save it as PSO2 mood letter, and I'm going to save it as a PSD. After I do that, it's going to say, oh, I already have it open. Well, this one's already saved, so that's why. Let me just save it as something else here. I'll save it as example 2. There we go. After you save it as a PSD, it's going to ask you this little box. Just say OK to that. That's fine. And then you're going to go back up to File and Save As. And this time, you're going to change where it says Save As Type right down here. You're going to change that Save As Type. You're going to change this to a JPEG. And you're going to save it that way as well. So you're going to save 2 copies of this. One is a JPEG and one is a PSD. Now, when you save it as a JPEG, it's going to show you right here. You can save it as a high-quality large file or a low-quality file. We'll talk about the difference between these when you start compressing JPEG files. But for now, just keep the slider all the way on the right. Keep it to the largest file that it can, and just press OK. It should be the number 12. All right. Those are the 2 files that you're going to submit to Schoology for credit. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Make some great artwork. Enjoy.